All right, I'm going to call to order this evening's Site and Architecture Commission meeting for March 2, 2022. First order of business is handling the virtual necessity of this meeting. And I'm going to make the following motion that by minute order, we determine that the governor has declared a statewide state of emergency regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, and that COVID-19 creates an imminent safety risk to Site and Architectural Commission members and other potential attendees of the Site and Architectural Commission meetings, and authorize conduct of this meeting by teleconference only pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, open parents, small e, closed parents. Is there a second?
I second that.
All righty, if we could do a roll call in relation to that motion, please.
Yes, Commissioner Balasubramanian,
Yes, in favor.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Sharma does not appear to be here yet. Same with Commissioner Zeidler, and so Chair White.
Yes, I support that motion. So thank you very much.
And if we could, Chair White, I could just read the rules of the meeting.
Please.
Then if we could do the official roll call.
Okay.
Commissioners, staff, and meeting participants, thank you for joining us for the March 2nd, 2022 Monte Sereno Site and Architectural Commission meeting. As the meeting is being called to order, I'd like to point out a few things to assist commission members, staff, and members of the public to successfully participate in this meeting. Commissioners, please keep your microphones muted until you wish to speak. For this commission meeting, we are using Zoom to host the meeting. At the bottom of the Zoom client, there are two icons, chat and raise hand. Please use chat only to report technical issues, such as being unable to hear a commissioner speaking. And please use the raise hand if you would like to be recognized and enabled to speak to the commission by the chairperson. Comments in the chat feature will not be part of the public record. For the public to comment under oral communication or any agenda item, in addition to using the raise hand feature, emails can be submitted to the city planner, limited to 350 words, and they will be read into the record. This limit is set to adhere to the typical 3-minute allowance. Only attendees using the Zoom application can use the raise hand option to comment. Participation from a telephone will allow for listening only and does not allow for any feedback. And finally, because we are not all in the same room, all votes at this meeting will be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's do we need to do a roll call to start?
Commissioner Balasubramanian. Here.
Ryan, just say you're here.
I sit here, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, you're muted. Sorry, bud.
Commissioner
Here.
Commissioner Zeidler,
Here.
Chair White,
Here.
and Commissioner Sharma. There's absence.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let's move to oral communications. This is the part of the meeting that we ordinarily have monthly, where if somebody in our audience wants to speak to a particular issue that is not agendized tonight, in other words, this is not something for which you have an application pending that we're going to be considering tonight. This is an opportunity for members of the public to bring to the attention of the Site and Architecture Commission other issues that may be of importance. So if anybody wants to speak on that particular topic, use the raise hand feature, and I'll know to call on you. And as usual, there's none. So appreciate everybody indulging that effort. Let's move to our first item, which tonight is approval of our last meeting minutes, which I believe were in December or January 5, I'm sorry, of 2022. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those?
Yes.
Great. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve those?
I will make a motion to approve those.
All right, is there a second? I will second. If we could do a roll call on that particular subject, I would appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Commissioner Balasubramanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Zeidler,
Yes.
and Chair White.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Okay, let's move into our public hearing then. We'll take the first item. If you could introduce that to us, please, Ms. Perkins, and we can begin to hear from the applicants and people interested in that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. This is an application for a tree removal permit to remove a total of 26 Italian cypress trees located in the backyard of 18389 Twin Creeks Road. The applicant has submitted this application with the desire to remove the trees as they serve as a harbor for rodents, and based on the planted location, sort of in the middle and across much of the width of the lot at that point, it does restrict the reasonable use of their backyard. Staff has recommended approval of this application with a total of 26 replacement trees, which is our typical 1-for-1 recommendation. Staff has included an option for the applicant is after tonight's hearing, if the application to remove these trees is approved, that they could have the option to submit a landscape plan that does show alternative replanting to our standard 1-for-1 replacement trees that could be considered by the commission at a future meeting. And this concludes the staff report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Perkins?
No questions.
Great. Okay, the applicant, and I believe, Lindsay, I think I saw your name in the panelists. So if the applicant wants to speak in support of this application, this is their opportunity to do so. If you use the raise hand feature, you don't have to speak in support of your application, but if you want to, this is your opportunity to do that. And if you use the raise hand feature, we'll know to call on you. Otherwise, we'll move forward with hearing from others from the public that may be interested in this application.
Okay, this is Nunzia. Can you hear me?
We can. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to double check if you guys, I did submit a response. I believe it's that public comment that was received on, I think it's the one that was dated 3/1, which just provides a bit of background information regarding these trees and our future plans for what we plan on doing with the backyard. So I just wanted to see if I should read through that really quickly in this meeting, or if you guys have all read that.
I have read it. Any other commissioners need to have any portion of that repeated to them?
No.
So I apologize. I'm traveling. I forgot to take my iPad, the city provided iPad with me. If you can just summarize it for me, that'll be great. Thank you.
Sure, of course, I can definitely summarize it for you. Basically, as Ms. Perkins said, we do have 26 Italian cypresses that are located in the middle of our backyard. They're definitely a home to a large rodent population, which is just disturbing. But aside from that, they do currently surround our pool, and they are definitely a nuisance with respect to the filtration system of our pool. We are currently in the process with working with an architect on doing some renovations to the home, which would include a larger pool, a patio, and also an ADU. And unfortunately, these trees are right in the middle of our backyard. I am a huge advocate for seeking a solution to any problems that we have. And actually for the past 6 months, we've been strategizing on how we could salvage these trees. So we have found a home for them. We'll be traveling 2 hours up north and delivering 26 trees to a vineyard and olive orchard in the city of Nicasio. And that's actually in Marin County. In return, we're pulling up between 6 and 10 olive trees, relatively large. Olive trees are about 15 years old, and we will be strategically placing those back on our property. In addition, we plan on, we're Italian, we love fruit trees. We love teaching kids how to eat right off of a tree and just teaching them that value. And so we are planning on building a small orchard in the back corner of our lot. And right now, between the architect and the arborist that we're working with, they're estimating that we'll need about 10 to 12 trees given the space that we have back there. I would like to reach out, or I would like to give a shout out to Mrs. Diana Perkins for helping us through this process, but timing is definitely of the essence. And that's why we're here earlier rather than later. This should have been a joint meeting with our full plans for the home. But because timing is of the essence, to successfully transport these trees, we need to do it as soon as possible and before the climate changes. The Mighty Tree Moving Company won't guarantee the survival of these trees if we do it once the heat starts picking up. So we're looking forward for your approval to move forward with this, and I'm here to help address any questions that anyone may have.
Awesome. You're to be commended for saving those trees. What
It
I
was a-
what
it
I
was
call
one of-
Cypress. It's like Stonehenge. It's like Cypress hedge over there.
Yeah.
Okay, do any commissioners have questions for the applicant?
No questions?
All right, seeing none. Is there, I see the comments from neighbors and I appreciate those, but is there anybody else in the audience tonight that wants to speak to this particular application? If you just use the raise hand feature, we'll know to call on you. Okay. I see it. A hand from Avesta Walker, who we also saw some written communications from. So go ahead, Ms. Walker. I got that right.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
All right. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on, but I have no picture on my screen. But I guess I'm just speaking to my, can you see me?
We cannot, I can't. But that's usually how it works in relationship to this Zoom love
Okay.
thing you've been doing lately.
All right. Well, we are the adjoining neighbors, and we have lived here for 50 years, since 1972. And so we are utmostly involved and concerned about the Cypress. And I have some very amazing information to give you about that. But first, I would like to say that we are in agreement with Mr. and Mrs. Vitarelli's plans and proposals to remove the cypress and to bring in the olive trees and form a small fruit orchard in the backyard, because that plan is consistent with the historic use of our properties and would not impede on our enjoyment and use of our own property. And so originally, when we bought our lot back in 1971, we were told that this was originally a prune orchard. And so that's the history. There were no ever any big trees here. But our position, unfortunately, I hope that all of you haven't had an opportunity to look at the photos that I submitted. And have you had that? Have you seen that? Because it
Yes.
shows
Thank
the
you.
impact.
And
Yes.
Yes, that's part of our packet. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, the large trees block our view of the Santa Cruz Mountains and our amazing sunsets, as is tested to in the photos that I submitted. All the large trees planted in our neighbor's backyard directly affect our enjoyment of our home. We placed our home, when we built it, on the lot. As you notice, if you go by, we're not directly on Twin Creeks. We're sort of at an angle so that the back of our yard could have a panorama view of the mountains and the sunsets. And so from our patio, from our backyard, from the windows in our home, we look out. But unfortunately, over the years, the growth of the cypress has impeded that. And so I'm speaking fast. I don't know how to get all this in, but there's no precedence for these big trees. And I'd like you to know that actually my husband and I paid for 6 of those cypress. And so we know from the heart what happened. And what happened was that shortly after Mr. Becker built that house, which was around 1979 or 80, his son went down to Payless, who was 16 years old, saw a sale for 99 cents for Monterey pines. And the trees were about 1 foot high. So Mr. Becker agreed with us that that was too big of a tree and would ruin everything. And so he replaced them with cypress because they were viewed as bushes or small shrubs. We had a couple in our yard. And he said, well, if you like those and you're happy with them, I'll have that too. And so we paid for 6. He went out shopping and bought them. They were very small. And so the first picture on my document from 1990, by then you can see that the cypress were starting to overreach the 6-foot fence and started to impede our view. But by 1990, a lot of tragedy had happened, and those trees, which we never thought of them as trees, were maybe 8 years old at the youngest. But in the meantime, Mr. Becker retired. His wife passed away suddenly of cancer, and he was a widow by 1990. And so at that point, things went downhill for the next 30 years. He just passed away last March. He was a very fine person, and we respected him, but we understood his dilemma. We did not know that he had gone on beyond 6 and planted 26, because you see, they were so small that for 10 years, we never saw them. And even in this picture, the others do not show up. He did tell us that he liked them so much, he planted some more. He didn't tell us 26 total, because they hid his little pool enclosure inside his yard, so he didn't have to look at the motor. So the ones that we had in our yard, when they started to get as tall as a ladder, we removed them because it was too dangerous to get on a ladder to keep them trimmed. Now, Mr. Becker was a do-it-yourselfer. He built the house himself, and he was his own gardener and own landscape designer. And so he did everything himself. And so consequently, when we moved ours, some rats ran out, and we told Mr. Becker about them. And then after that, living alone, he told us he was scared of the rats, and that he couldn't cut his back because he couldn't climb on the ladder. So for 30 more years, they grew and grew, and now they're 52 feet tall. But unfortunately, as you can see in the photos, which show everything, we no longer can see the hills. And of course, we are heavily invested with rats, including the air conditioner. But that has nothing to do with the replacement. We do not approve of any large tree grow in replacement. Mr. Becker never intended to impede our view. He cooperated with us to plant something small that would just be pleasant inside his 6-foot fence. And so they were never intended to be trees, and so should not be replaced with some big tree that was never the plan in the first place. There is no
Okay,
plan.
Ms. Walker, if I could just interrupt, because we're well past the 3 minutes that everybody has. And I very much appreciate your comments, and I'm pleased that you support this particular application. Is there anything that's not reflected in the writing that you gave us that is germane to our consideration of this application? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Appreciate your comments tonight. Anybody else from the audience that wants to speak in support or opposition to this particular application? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion and circle back to the commissioners for a discussion and consideration of this particular application. Anybody want to start us off tonight?
I can start. This is Narayan here. So I visited the site, I saw the trees, and given that there's a rat infestation, right? I think the trees probably need to move, and the good news is they found a new house for the trees. So I'm actually in support of this project.
Anyone else?
I agree with the removal. They're not native trees. They're too large to be aesthetic in that particular location. My only hesitation, I think, requiring 26 replacement trees would be excessive, because the cypress are narrow, and if they're replaced with some native trees, oaks and such, the crowns will be wider. And I would be happy with half that number of replacement trees, for example.
Anyone else? Patrick?
No, I'm good. I'm in agreement with the trees as far as, the problems that we experience with that particular variety. And I think that it's a fair requirement to have 50% of them replaced. So.
I concur as well. My only comment, I would warn the walkers that there's no right to a view. So if they do come back with trees that impede that view, that may be something they can do. But that will not be for this commission to decide. But I do want people to be aware of that. And I would make a motion that we adopt the draft memorandum of decision in relationship to this particular application number, which is 2022-3006. There's a second.
I will second that.
All right, Ms. Perkins, will you please do a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Balasubramanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Zeidler,
I agree with do we want to drop it from 26 to 13? Did that get reflected in the motion?
It's in the motion, it's in the decision. They can come back with a landscape plan and address.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that
Okay.
departure protocol. I agree.
and Chair White.
I support the motion, yes. All right, good luck to the applicants and their neighbors. Thanks, everybody, for participating on that particular item. We'll now move on to item number 2. If Ms. Perkins could introduce that for us, I would be very appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. This is also an application for a tree removal permit on Twin Creeks Road. This application is for the removal of 2 valley oak trees at 18576 Twin Creeks Road. The trees are actually located on a shared driveway, and both trees do contain rot and are structurally unstable due to the construction of the paving around them, and they are both close to the creek bank, which is the structural instability and the rotting conditions are noted in the arborist report. Staff does recommend approval of the removal of these 2 trees with a condition that 2 24-inch box replacement trees be planted. And that concludes the staff report.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ms. Perkins. Commissioners, any questions for staff? Okay. Does the applicant want to speak in support of this particular application? Again, you don't have to, but if you want an opportunity to do that, you can. All right. I see Mila in the audience tonight. If you want to speak.
Hello,
Hi.
this is Mila's husband, Dan Bassian.
The one in the photo, right?
Yes, yes, I'm standing next to the tree.
You look great there, Dan.
Thank you.
Go ahead, guys.
So I just want to kind of summarize. I'm glad they're recommending removal. So we purchased the house just last summer in August, and we noticed the one tree was kind of leaning over our house. And then in the course of the fall and the winter, 2 larger trees than this fell. One on just a clear blue day, it just snapped off at the dirt, and it was very big and really disturbing. And the guys that were removing it, they said that there was some kind of fungus or something underneath the ground there, and that's why it just broke off. The other one came down in a storm, and it snapped about 15 feet up in the air and landed in the creek. And when the rains really came hard, it created a lot of problems. The creek almost overflowed in front of our house. And then when the arborist came out, he noticed that that tree wasn't very healthy, and it has a large limb had snapped off years ago, and there's really deep rot in that tree. So again, that's the one leaning right over our house. He did notice another, tree, much larger tree further toward the street. And he explained how unhealthy that tree was. And unfortunate, this is like the first tree that fell. It was just this giant, beautiful oak that's not healthy now. And that one's more of a concern that a limb will fall on somebody's car or someone's that's walking under it, because it's right over the beginning of the driveway. And then the one back to the one that's by our house, we're obviously concerned that it'll fall on our house one day and, cause a lot of damage and possibly kill or injure one of us. So those are our concerns. We appreciate your consideration for removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Commissioners, any questions for the applicants? All right, seeing none, thank you both. Anybody from the audience that wants to speak to your neighbor, the McCarthy's are here. Go ahead. And I think you're muted. That's helpful. There we go.
My name is Jim. I'm actually Teleconferencing wife, so we live in the house right next to Dan and the Nana for about 10 years. And we are totally agree with Dan and the arborist assessment in terms of trees condition. We've been here 10 years and we actually have removed 2 very large oak trees because of the same safety and security concerns, and those trees were infected with, I think the arborist called the oak fungus that tends to spread through the soil. And we actually had arborist report from several years ago. I don't know whether the city has any record of it. So just want to stress that this is the for us from the safe in our own home, especially considering the current weather and flood situation that's going on here. And just to reinforce, I think we have about 3 houses on this driveway, and every house through, even though through different owners has experienced different tree traumas. As early as a couple of years ago, a large valley oak shed a very large limb running out of our backyard in the middle of the night. And the husband was back there. And the tree, the limb fell with such a noise that police came over. So we once our neighbor petition to have those trees removed, and we will be happy to replant or replace the trees with the recommendation from the commissioners or from the city or from the arborist.
Okay, thank you. For whatever reason, the connection was somewhat garbled, but I understood you to support the application. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, and my principal concern with this application was whether this tree number 2, the one with the lovely photo of Dan next to it, is actually on your property or that of the applicants. But based on your support, you have no objection to removal of that tree. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for showing up tonight and giving us your thoughts. Anybody else from the audience that wants to communicate in relationship to this particular application? All right, I don't see any additional hands. I'm going to close the public comment portion of this particular item on our agenda and circle back to commissioners for discussion. I would support this, although they're beautiful oaks. They're both diseased. They're going to fall and they're going to cause damage. The conditions under which they would be approved for removal, that is to replacement with 24-inch box, seems appropriate to me. I would support this application. Does anybody else feel otherwise?
I agree with everything you said. You know, I think my time with the commission, right? I've never seen such big trees come for removal, but sad, you know, they are, they have rot in them. So, so they need to go. And I think I agree with you also, like when you say that a 24-inch replacement will work. So I totally support this application.
I agree
as well.
Okay, then I'm going to move that we adopt the memorandum of decision for tree removal permit under application number 20223005. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
And Ms. Perkins, if you'll do a roll call vote, we'll be done with this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ballasubramanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Zeidler,
Yes.
and Chair White.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Perkins. Okay, we are now on to item number 3. And if you'll introduce that, Ms. Perkins, we would all be very appreciative.
This is an application for a site development permit and a tree removal permit at 15222 Elm Park Court. The addition to the house is at the back of the house. There is a first story addition of about 207 square feet, and then an additional area added to the basement of 943 square feet. The two trees proposed for removal are both redwood trees. And as noted in the arborist report for this project, both trees are in decline and have significant portions of the tree that have already died. So staff does recommend approval of both the site development permit and the tree removal permit with the conditions noted in the memo of decision. And that concludes the staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Perkins? I have one question, and it's only because on my agenda, this is item 2022-3007, and so too is the following item on Greenwood Road. I just want to make sure we got the right numbering when we adopt.
Thank you. Yes, this application is the real 3007. The next
Real.
item has a typo, and that application is 3008. Thank
Okay.
you for noting that.
Well, the real 3007 now stands. Okay, great. Is there anybody here on behalf of the applicant that wants to speak tonight in support of this application? All right, I see a hand from a Robert Scott.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Good evening to the commission and Chair White. And thank you, Diana Perkins, for your somewhat tireless responses to us as we work through getting this prepared. Very helpful. My name is Robert Scott. I'm here on behalf of Mork Wilness Architects in San Francisco. We're the design architect for the project. And being somewhat naive in the ways of the Monte Sereno Site and Architectural Commission, I have a very brief synopsis of the project I'll share. And I promise I won't take too much of your time, just to give a little bit of clarity of the scope and then the kind of role those two trees play. Excuse me, the scope is a partial renovation in addition to an existing 1977 single-family residence. The addition itself is essentially two-part. The first is, as Diana said, on the first story is approximately 200 square feet that tracks down to the lower level as well. Really intended to blend in with the volume of the existing building, which is a beige stucco with white window and door trim, as well as asphalt shingles. The intent there is to really just blend in as seamlessly as we can to the existing structure. The second component is an approximately 700 square foot pavilion, more pavilion-like addition that connects to the body of the existing dwelling via a conditioned hallway. That's at the level of the basement. It's primarily a wood and glass structure and is really designed to maximize transparency and sit as lightly as it can on the landscape. Touches down via slender columns, which you can see in the renderings that we included in the application documents, and was positioned. We spent a lot of time trying to tightly fit this thing between the existing trees because we really love the trees that are on site. And it was something that was important to the client as well, to really respect the landscape and make this thing feel like it had been there for some time. The two trees that are noted for removal on the arborist report are two coastal redwoods, which are further down the slope. They're actually not impacted in any way by the proposed architectural work. They just observed as part of their survey of the roughly 50 feet adjacent to the proposed work scope that those two trees had significant illness. And as Diana mentioned, there's a bit of tree death. I think they said something like a quarter of the top of one tree and a third or half of another. So those are really included just as a kind of safety precaution. If they're going to go down at some point, we figure we might as well include it in this application. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Scott?
I was just curious, and I probably should look through it again, but I'll just instead, what will be the use of the addition? Is it additional bedroom space or a family room?
Yes, so the addition at the main level is a studio off of the primary bedroom suite. One of our clients is an artist and she wanted some space to practice her art and had access to good light. On the lower level, there are two new bedrooms proposed, as well as a shared bathroom. We're renovating, excuse me, the existing section of the existing basement, which is currently a game room / family room. It will retain that functionality. I'm just going to get some updated finishes. The connected pavilion component that's really moving over some of the game room function. So it could be ping pong table. It's a sort of party space when they have gatherings. It also includes a fitness room right now. I believe they're using their garage as part of the place for the treadmill and those kinds of things. So this now will have its own dedicated space in the pavilion, as well as a sauna and a small kitchenette and a water closet.
Thank you. Sounds lovely.
Yeah, we all set for the next COVID with a gym. Anybody else got questions for Mr. Scott? All right, thank you, Mr. Scott, very much for your time. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak on this particular agenda item? Just use the raise hand feature. We'll know to call on you. All right, seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment portion of the meeting. Circle back to commissioners for discussion. Anybody want to take the lead on this one?
I would be in support of it just because of the fact that the trees obviously have been diagnosed with disease. And that it seems to me that the property owner is trying to do everything they can to complement the land that the existing property sits on, in addition to the existing structure itself. So sounds like they're very conscientious about what they're designing and how they're going about it. So
I agree. Anybody else?
I agree with Commissioner Booker. The only other thought I had and why I asked about the use of the additional space is because there's such housing demand. If there'd be a possibility of making it constitute a ADU or junior ADU, I don't know if that would fundamentally change what the applicant had in mind. I just thought it worth mentioning.
Yes, after our joint session with the city council and the arena numbers we heard, that would certainly help things. But I appreciate your comments. Anybody else? Very good then. I'm going to move then that we approve the memorandum of decision for site development permit and tree removal permit labeled 2022-3007. Is there a second?
Quick question. Are we suggesting a tree replacement for the trees that are being removed?
That's
Or
part of the memorandum of decision, yeah. 24-inch box trees. Wait, where is it here?
I'm not sure I saw it, so that's why I'm asking.
Ryan, you may be right. I see it.
Yeah, so but I agree that the package is quite big, so I could have missed it. So
I know, right?
There are quite a few trees on the property. I don't know if they, and I think a lot of them are native trees. Maybe we could ask the applicant.
Yeah, I don't know if Mr. Scott, if you're still available, but is there a plan to replace these trees with 2 replacements?
I think it's something that the owner, I suspect, would be content to do. We hadn't discussed that explicitly. My understanding, just from what I've read from previous decisions, is that it is typically required to replace them 1 for 1. So I think that was what our assumption was, but happy to defer to your decision.
Great, thank you. So commissioners, my thought is we got to be uniform in the application of replacement trees. And I know that there are a lot of trees on this property, but since they're removing 2 large redwoods, I think requesting that the memorandum of decision be supplemented with the requirement for 2 replacement 24-inch box trees would be consistent with all the other applications that have come before us in the past and approved.
I agree with that. I think being consistent is the key word. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's only fair.
Yep.
I think that can be the default position if someone doesn't argue otherwise, and then we could always consider it, I suppose, if they argue otherwise.
Well, of course, yeah, there could be unique circumstances to a property that would warrant us to not consider that. But in this particular instance, I think it's appropriate. So let me withdraw my motion and restate it. That I move that we approve the memorandum of decision for site development permit and tree removal permit 2022-3007, the real 7, with the modification that 2 24-inch box replacement trees be added to the conditions to approval. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Narayan. All right, Ms. Perkins, would you do a roll call on this one, please, for us?
Thank you. Commissioner Balasubramanian,
Yes.
Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Zeidler,
Yes.
Chair White.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Perkins. All right, congratulations. We're now to our last item on the agenda tonight.
So Chair White, before we proceed,
Sure.
I was instructed by the city lawyer that this property is within 500 feet of my property. So I have to recuse myself for this particular item. And I was also recommended that I should leave, the meeting, So as much as I would like to stay on and hear what's happening, I was told I cannot participate. So with your permission, I would like to, make an exit. Yeah.
Well, since it's the last item, have a wonderful evening.
All right. Thank you.
Next month. All right. Thank you.
See you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Looks like he's gone. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Perkins. I think you were about to speak. I apologize.
No problem. As noted, this application is actually 2022-3008. It is also for a site development permit and a tree removal permit. The location is 16016 Greenwood Road. The addition and modifications to the property are all in the back of the house. There is a proposed 191 square foot addition at the first floor. Some modifications to existing covered areas and new covered areas, which net an increase of 528 square feet. And a new 416 square foot detached accessory structure proposed to be used as a pool pavilion. The application does also include the removal of 5 trees. And this application is actually a recommendation to the city council as the existing lot has a legal non-conforming condition where the impervious coverage existing is 46.6%, which exceeds the current zoning standards, but was approved with the construction of the new house in the early 1990s. The applicant has proposed to reduce the overall impervious coverage to 45.3%, which is a reduction overall. So given the additional square footage and covered areas proposed, there were other existing areas of impervious coverage that are proposed for removal or conversion to pavers, for which we give a 50% credit for any impervious paver area in that calculation. So regarding the site development permit, staff is recommending approval based on with the conditions in the memo of decision. Similarly, staff does recommend approval of the tree removal permit, as well as the consideration of the legal non-conforming condition and the standard in the municipal code for approving an alternative non-conforming condition is that the proposal is more compatible with the zoning district than the existing. And because the overall impervious coverage is being reduced and is closer to the current standards, staff is recommending approval of the proposed modification to the non-conforming condition. The recommendations in the memo of decision are also part of the staff recommendation, and that concludes the staff report. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. So it's only 5 trees that are going to be removed?
Correct.
Okay, and this arborist report's lengthy, and I'm not sure. Is the basis for removal of these trees that the proposed improvements are going to be in the area in which these trees exist? That doesn't look to be the case.
That is the case for the removals. They're either in the area of the improvement or very close to where the construction will be occurring.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions for Ms. Perkins? Thank you, Ms. Perkins, very much. Okay, by now you kind of know the drill. We're happy to hear from the applicant if they want to speak in support of this particular application. And I see a Mr. Weber with his hand up. Mr. Weber, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you, Mr. White,
You're welcome.
Ms. Perkins, commissioners. Thank you for your consideration for this project. We agree with Ms. Perkins' very thorough summary of the project and the recommendations for approval. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to review the drawings and the documents we provided describing the proposed site modifications. So we'd like to be available to answer any questions you have about the project.
Well, I'll ask the question that I asked of Ms. Perkins. So the reason why we need to remove these trees, and they seem relatively small, is because they're going to interfere with the proposed new improvement. Is that correct?
That is correct. And you are also correct. They are relatively small, and none of them are, of course, are native species. They're all ornamental trees. And it's my understanding they'll be replaced in kind with plantings elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant, commissioners?
It just, again, like on the last application, it crossed my mind that we're getting increased coverage, and was there any thought to adding an ADU? I understand it's a little different in character than what the applicant's seeking to do, but was there any thought to that given as a possibility?
Well, Allison, I've got to tell you that there actually has been some thought about an ADU, but that's simply not a part of this particular application. I think it's possible that this particular homeowner may have an application for an ADU at some subsequent time. But for the time being, we're working on just the pool pavilion. Thank you, by the way, for being an advocate for that.
I did want to note too, when we're reviewing it, the reduction in impervious coverage from 46.6% to 45.3% is what, about a 1% change. It's basically no change almost. So I don't think we want to oversell that it's making it more compatible with the zoning district, because it's pretty darn similar. But I can understand where people wouldn't want to reduce the structural coverage. They buy a beautiful home and they don't want to make things smaller. So I get that.
Patrick, any questions for the applicant?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, Allison, nothing further? All right, thank you, Mr. Weber, very much. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak in support or opposition to this particular application? All right, seeing no new hands up, we will close the public comment portion of this particular item on our agenda and discuss it amongst ourselves, commissioners. Anyone want to take lead on this?
I think I jumped the gun on my commentary, so I'll just be silent.
Perfect. It was perfect. No, go ahead. Okay, so the trees that are going to be removed, from my perspective, are not very large, as I commented about earlier. And if they're going to be replaced with additional trees, I think that might actually be an improvement to the property in the long term. I do have problems with the impervious stuff. I'd like to see more of that reduced. But that's really for the city council to make a decision about. We're only making a recommendation based on the application before us. The improvements are not significant in terms of overall added, we're not, in other words, we're reducing, if anything, we're not adding additional square footage. So I'm going to tend to support the application, or at least make a recommendation to the city council that they support the application. Anybody else feel differently?
No, I wouldn't. The only question that I would have is just the impervious coverage on the property, like you were mentioning. And you were saying that the city council would be responsible for addressing that if it were brought up as an issue, correct?
Well, yeah, that's the reason that it's before them.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, we would have jurisdiction to approve it. Now, we could move to recommend that they consider that the property address that particular issue, or the applicant address that particular issue as part of their consideration.
Mhm. Yeah,
But otherwise, we're just making a recommendation to them.
yeah.
I do have one further question. So, what was it, Diana Perkins, that said they get 50% credit for the pavers? Are they permeable pavers?
Correct. We will confirm with the building permit submittal that the pavers are set on a pervious base. So a sand or gravel base versus set in concrete.
Yeah. I don't know what Steve, I don't know what the recommendation would be for them to review that. I guess they would have, it would have to come from us, correct?
Right. And Ms. Perkins, are we, the tree issue seems relatively easy, I think, for all of us as commissioners tonight. And it's just this impervious coverage issue that is the obstacle, if there is to be one. Do we entertain separate motions on those issues?
No, it could be all one motion. I would also point out that at the top of the third page of the staff report, it does show what elements on the site are contributing to the impervious coverage, both existing and proposed. And the majority, I could have probably labeled it a little bit better, but is the impervious patio, but that actually includes the tennis court. I probably should have broken that out separately, but the large portion of the impervious coverage, other than the structure itself, is the tennis court.
Okay.
I suppose we could, recommend to the city council that they investigate whether there are other ways of decreasing the impervious coverage, but I understand wanting to replace the pool pavilion with pool pavilion and not lose any of the structures they have now.
And I equally believe that they shouldn't have to lose their tennis court because they're remodeling. Yeah, I mean, that's not fair either, right? In my view. So I would move that we recommend that the city council approve this application. The one thing that I don't have, though, is a memorandum of decision. We just have that recommendation, I guess, at the end there.
It is attached to the draft resolution because it will be going before the city council, and then the standard conditions are attached to that.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, very good. And do we have in here a requirement for replacement trees? I don't see that, but maybe I'm just skipping it.
There is, one second. There is a landscape plan on, let me get the sheet number. Sheet L 2.0 has a landscape plan which shows 9 replacement trees.
Okay.
And in the standard conditions, the recommendation is that the landscape replanting comply with this landscape plan submitted.
Yeah, I see item section 2D. Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so against that backdrop, I'm going to move that we recommend the city council adopt the proposed resolution as drafted in relationship to application 2022-3008. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Shall we do a roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Booker,
Yes.
Commissioner Zeidler.
Yes.
And Chair White.
Yes. All right. Well, good luck to the Heffernans, and thank you, Mr. Weber, for your time tonight. And thank everybody for their time tonight. Thank you, Allison, Patrick, and Ms. Perkins and Michelle. Thank you guys all. We have anything other business tonight, Ms. Perkins?
I did just want to report one thing. At the December Site and Architectural Commission meeting, when we reviewed the SB9 regulations, the commission did ask for an update on how many projects we have received. And so far, since January 1st, we have not received any projects submitted under SB9. We have had quite a few inquiries. But from the feedback we've received so far, the 800 square foot building size limit has really been a deterrent. So far, no applications, and I'll keep you updated on what we do receive.
We appreciate that greatly. Thank you so much. All right, let's adjourn. Everybody have a wonderful evening and a wonderful March. We'll see you guys in April.
Thank
You
you.
as well. Thank you.
everyone.
Great.
Good night.
Right.